And welcome to this week's Retvlog. And so the pre-patch is out. So to all intents and purposes, the way we're doing things now is nothing to do with the Legion. I need to delete my Legion playlist and start organising everything else. But I'm going to be discussing what's happened with Rets in the pre-patch. There's been a lot of unexpected things, really. I'm going to discuss a difficulty I've come across, I'd never really thought about in advance, and how I've dealt with it using Tell Me When. And I'm going to also cover a change in terms of how we would deal with a particular talent. But, you know, it's a talent we're not going to use at the moment anyway, but still I'm going to discuss that one. So the first things first, a lot of questions about this everywhere, and it's about the Darkmoon Faire Trinket bug. The problem is a lot of people were looking at logs and going, oh my god, Retribution Paladin is blowing everyone away. What's this? Oh, they're all using the Darkmoon Faire Trinket. What's all that about? People paying $250,000 gold for it, all that sort of thing. There was a bug with it. It's not there anymore. It's finished. It's done. What happened with it when you use this trinket? I don't know why, but for some reason, it meant your spenders didn't cost holy power. Now, at the best of times, that's going to mean cha-ching, going to do loads of damage. But given that one change Blizzard made just before the pre-patch went live was to massively buff our spenders, I knew that was coming. It's been coming for a very long time. In fact, I don't know why it took as long as it did to emerge into the live build. But that was coming. The result of which, I mean, imagine yourself on a fight where you can just spam Templar's Verdict, all right? When Judgment's up, might as well throw a Judgment out and then buff your next Templar's Verdicts, but otherwise you're just spamming Templar's Verdicts, blah, 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 blah. You know, throwing out Inquisition and stuff like that. But not having to build and spend. So of course it meant people did a lot of damage. Now, I didn't use the Darkmoon Faire Trinket for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't actually know about it when it was seen. The way I found out about it was Solsaka actually saying, "Oh, Blizzard have fixed it now." So it's like, oh, okay. Not that I would have anyway. Problem with something like that is it is an exploit. It's an exploit. It's clearly something that's not intended. It's not supposed to work like that. You're getting an advantage from something that's not supposed to work like that way. That being said, I don't think it's really a bannable situation in this case. Like some people were saying, oh, these people are claiming they've been banned for it. I don't believe that. It's not the sort of thing Blizzard would ban for, because although it is an exploit, it's not really giving you any tangible advantage. You know, all right, you're getting high logs in Antorus. Who the hell cares? It's dead. Antorus is finished. It's done in the water. There's a difference between, you know, exploiting something and by you. I mean, the other side of it as well is you're using a trinket which you might have used anyway. It's not your fault that it's bugged, and you're not like using it in a way that's helping you in the world first progress race or world anything progress race. There's no progress race at all. Cutting Edge has disappeared even. So yeah, it's not a bannable thing, really. I don't think Blizzard would be that heavy-handed in this case. But that was the bug, and it's finished with, so, you know, that's it, done and dusted. I assume, if it hasn't already happened, that Kira, who is the author of Warcraft logs, at some point, will remove all the logs from Ret Paladins who use that trinket. Because that's, you know, that's the main reason. If you had a Ret in your raid at the time who was using that, you know, the main reason why some people might have gone, don't use that, was not because they thought people would get banned or anything like that. It's because what's very likely to happen in this situation is the logs would be made null and void. They don't just remove that player's log, they remove the whole logs. So anyone who at this point cares about, like, parsers in pre-patch, but some do, I suppose, that would be the reason. So I assume they'd be removed. But it does create a bit of a downside. Like, some people are looking at this and going, oh, Ret Paladins, you know, doing really well in the raids. Oh, blah, they're blowing everyone away. Oh, and the simming really high as well, because the sims, of course, are not going to have taken into account a bug which we didn't even know about. But it's not a good thing. It's a terrible thing. Stop thinking good thoughts. Whenever you see, whether it's a sim, a stacked sim comparing those classes, I've told you about those. I've warned you away for years, or a few years anyway, about stacked sims comparing between different specs. But also, even when you see it in logs, and we have still been doing rolling logs, it's a really bad thing. And the reason for that is because what happens at this point, and you'll see it now, the videos I'm sure have already started to come out. I haven't seen any yet, but I'm sure they will, where people will be showing off these sims and going, oh, this class is looking really great. And people will think, oh, this class is really shit. There's no point in playing it in BFA. Oh, this one's looking really good. I'll play that for BFA. Even Ian Hazakostas himself said on Thursday, tuning. We're into tuning. And we're going to be tuning for pre-patch at the moment. And then we're going to be tuning for endgame. So the tuning process has got ages to go. Long way off. You have no way of... If you're trying to judge, like just based on... And these sims are just patchwork sims as well. It's planting your feet, single target for 5 minutes on a boss. A single target boss. With not having to do anything else. And if you're going to base like a decision on what to play or what's good or what's bad on that... then you need your head looking at, because no one is going to be able to see what they're actually going to end up like when it's all done and dusted. But a lot of people do. And so the downside is you have this huge reaction, oh, such and such is overpowered, it's not fair. And I'd like to think that Blizzard know themselves that this isn't an issue and aren't going to like pull the trigger. But they do produce the most ridiculous knee-jerk reactions when people blow up on forums. They've done it before. And they'll do it. They've done it recently before. I'm not even talking about the days, you know, because in the first couple of, like, I remember TBC pre-patch when that came out, and what happened was Ret Paladins, because Ret Paladins were a bit of a joke before that, even though you could still actually do really good damage if you got off blessing duty, but it was very crap spec. And in terms of any sort of interest, there's no interest at all. But the TBC pre-patch were also really good. You know, you could beat people up quite easily in PvP, and PvE were knocking it out as well. We got the new ability Crusader Strike, which now is like one of our lowest priority, boring abilities. This was a new thing then. It was shiny and new, and it was really good as well. And it did extra special things that compared to now, where it's just a filler builder. But and then, you know, and based on the pre-patch information, they just nerfed the hell out of us. And one of the things it used to do is we used to put judgments on things which had benefits. It wasn't just a spell that gave a debuff for us. It put debuffs on targets that benefited everyone in the raid, or lots of people in the raid anyway. But each paladin could only judge different one, like it could put one judgment on it using a particular seal. But it doesn't matter about that. The point is that Ret Paladin with Crusader Strike, you could refresh all the judgments. Not just your judgment. You could refresh every other paladin's judgment. So every other paladin, in theory, just had to judge a boss once at the start. The Retribution Paladin would keep them refreshed by using their Crusader Strike. Now, the judgments lasted 20 seconds. Crusader Strike had something like a 6-second cooldown. I want to say a 6-second cooldown. And what they did is they nerfed it to 10 seconds. Now, what that meant was that, you know, you've refreshed the judgments. 10 seconds later, you can use Crusader Strike again. But let's say you miss. We didn't have like hit cap at this point necessarily, especially at the start of TBC. So you miss. Well, now you're buggered, because although in theory you could use it 20 seconds, you know, lag and everything else like that being accounted for, they'll probably have dropped off just as you're trying to use it. So it meant one miss, and you might have to ask the other paladins to put their judgments back on. So that was a massive pain in the ass. If they reduced it to 8 seconds, which I think later on in the expansion they changed it to 8 seconds, it wouldn't have been as bad from that point of view. And it's not like it was balanced even at the start. Anyway, they over-nerfed it. So the fear is that that sort of thing could happen again. We'll just have to see. Hopefully not. But it's always I always worry when it's looking really good, because, you know, I know that tuning's still early on. It's not going to be like that at the end. But if a lot of negative reaction comes away and Blizzard do knee-jerk stuff. So yeah. Anyway, on to other things. First of all, I'd be quite interested in seeing what other people have found with the new specs. Now that we've all tried it out, and we have all tried it out, because what was expected, of course, if you're a raiders particularly, you know, I went into the raid thinking, oh, you know, well, I went into the raid knowing this wouldn't happen, actually. But when the pre-patch launched in North America, as far as I was concerned, we were going to be going into Antorus, kick the hell out of it, because that's the way it works. You know, if you're a guild that's already defeated that raid on the highest level, the pre-patch comes around, you're all relatively stronger. Now, although we knew we were losing the artifacts, we'd also had all the squish and everything like that, you'd still expect to be able to bowl right through that raid. Not a bit of it. Not only are we not as powerful compared to the encounters, but many of the mechanics have been buggered as well to make the fights. You know, we're a guild who, ever since I joined it, has been clearing Mythic Argus in one night. I think there was 1 week where we had to use a little bit of the following night, actually. All of a sudden, we've done 2 full nights, and we've still got multiple bosses left up. We've still got, what have we got? Argus, Dogs, good, sod the Dogs, Imanar, and Kingaroth, right? Not that we may have had a problem on Kingaroth, but you can't get to Kingaroth until you've killed Imanar, and we had problems on Imanar. So it's all a bit of a nightmare, really. So we've got to raid again to get it done. I think some people will be thinking sod it at this point, but you ought to at least kill Argus for them out. So we've had plenty of time to play with it. There's not been any blowing your way through and not really been able to learn anything. One thing, but I'd be interested to know what you've learned, what things you prefer, but what things you're having trouble with. So maybe I could help with that. One thing I noted that I was having trouble with, for which of course tracking is the key to it, is with Inquisition and using Avenging Wrath. So at the start, relatively straightforward, build a bit of Holy Power, Inquisition, then use your Avenging Wrath, and then into all the stuff. Now, what I was finding is later in the fight, you know, I'd be using my Avenging Wrath and going, yeah, Avenging Wrath. Not being used to using Inquisition in these raids. And, sorry, I'm sweating like a pig. It's still ridiculously hot. And I've got the lights on as well for the green screen. But I was, yeah, using Avenging Wrath. And then all of a sudden I'd go, oh, no, I know what I've done. And Inquisition would be fading at some point, so I'd then have to refresh Inquisition during Avenging Wrath. Big no-no. You want to refresh it if necessary. If Inquisition is not going to last for the full duration of Avenging Wrath, you should refresh it before you use Avenging Wrath. So if something like that needs to be solved with notification. So what I did, I used Tell Me When. And, you know, some of you may use weak auras, that's fine too. I find Tell Me When, for the things that Tell Me When does, it's so much easier to use, so I use that. So what I did, first of all, I clicked it's only shown in combat. And then I pissed about here, because this is on my North American account, by the way, because the European servers, you know, basically the load of them have been down this morning, and even the ones that have been up are not showing my characters on them. There's been big troubles on the EU things. So I had to go into the NA one on my Paladin there, who doesn't have anything really set up. So this is the first one. So what I did here, I may have to pause it every now and then, is I chose to do as a spell cooldown. You can see I'm pausing. This is not me pausing the video. This is me thinking about it, because I wasn't sure what to do. So I did spell cooldown and Avenging Wrath. So to track Avenging Wrath. Because there were different ways I could have done this. Hovering over the icons to make sure it's definitely the current one. But in the custom texture, I want it to show the Inquisition icon. Because that's what it's for. It's to remind me to use Inquisition. And then, for some reason, this isn't me failing to spell terribly. This is something happening. Every time I start to type it about, it kept deleting. So I just put part of it and then clicked on the correct Inquisition. Make sure you use the right one, because it has existed before. And then for opacity, make sure it's full on ready and not ready. And then, you know, also, because I want to show timers, I want to, you know, timers are quite important when it comes to cooldowns. So you can work out when is the best time to use something. So I put all the timer options on. And then it's the conditions. So the first condition, I want this to flag up when Avenging Wrath is coming off cooldown or is off cooldown. So I, for the one condition, did for Avenging Wrath, and again, click the right one. And I just put it on less than or equal to 7 seconds, you know, because it's coming off cooldown. 7 seconds is enough time for you to plan when you're going to, first of all, for you to check what your current uptime on Inquisition is. Because if it's long enough, then there's no problem at all. It's only when it's not, then you want to sort of be a bit aware of it. And then the second condition was Inquisition. And I wanted to track this if it had anything less than 30 seconds. Now, the reason for that is, for Avenging Wrath, of course, I only need it to have 20 seconds left when I use Avenging Wrath. But, first of all, when it flags up, there's 7 seconds still potentially to go. And then there might be a few seconds where I delay Avenging Wrath for some other reason anyway. So I thought 30 seconds. So you could just see there, it's not working at all. So I've gone away to get out of combat because I've done something wrong. This sometimes happens. You just have to check everything through. What had actually happened, I was thinking it was that thing. It wasn't that thing. What had actually happened was, instead of putting less than or equal to 30 seconds, I put equal to 30 seconds. That's no good. Less than or equal to 30 seconds duration on Inquisition. That will include 0. That means, you know, that will still flag up even if Inquisition isn't active at all. So as soon as I'm in combat, it's flagged up now, but as soon as I use Inquisition, it goes away. I still haven't used Avenging Wrath though, but now I have. And just into the normal sort of opener there. So Inquisition first and then use your Avenging Wrath and then other things. Now you can see here, Avenging Wrath is about to come off cooldown. There it is, 7 seconds. Now it's flashing up. So it's reminding me, I'm about to use Avenging Wrath, but I'm sort of thinking to myself, oh, but now, okay, but until I use Inquisition, then it's still going to be like that. It's just a little reminder that lets me know, okay, I can check my Inquisition uptime. And if it's not going to be enough, just use that. And if it is enough, then that's fine. Because as soon as I hit the Avenging Wrath, it'll go away anyway. And there you go. That's all there is to that one. But tracking just in general is super important. You may have to change some of the things you've tracked this time round. I mean, you could argue it's... I mean, I've still got some of my older Tommy ones, like including the Judgment debuff. It was quite important for me to track the Judgment debuff in Legion. Now it's not so important. Not really important. I could just remove it. And when I get around to redoing them... I mean, at the moment, I'm just adding tell me when's in extra that I need. I'm not necessarily removed ones yet that I don't need. I'd probably argue I don't really need that one because it's a consumable debuff, so that's fine. But yeah, this is one that I've sort of definitely found to be useful. Now, in terms of one semi-important change, so when I did the pre-patch guide, I knew of course all the way through it you may have noticed, and if you haven't seen that by the way yet, then that's up somewhere. I'll put it up there somewhere. The pre-patch guide, I knew when they were going to do this that Blizzard will change things. They're going to change things all the way through. So all the way through that video, I was saying it's quite important to sim yourself. Sim yourself. Use raid bots, sim yourself. Because, you know, and then I was trying to explain how the abilities work rather than saying you should take these things. Because now, generally speaking, what we're seeing is what you should probably take if you've got access to it is Whisper of the Nathrazim and Soul of the High Lord. But, you know, around about the time, you know, different sets of gear were simming for different talents. And legendaries and things like that. So, and the same thing was happening. But the way I was looking at it when I did that guide is we're probably going to be using Divine Judgment if you had the 2-set bonus. Because Judgment does a load of damage. Although Divine Judgment without that 2-set bonus was not looking quite as sharp, with it definitely was. As Consecration and Wake of Ashes, that is. It definitely was. But then, of course, they nerfed Judgment and buffed our spenders. So that meant 2 consequences. First of all, if you use Divine Judgment, then the advice in there, what I was definitely saying is, you know, in the case of using Divine Judgment, you can Divine Storm 2 targets. It's the only time you can Divine Storm 2 targets. Do not do it if you do not have that talent. However, even in the here and now, you still wouldn't do that. The reason for that is that they have massively buffed our spenders. And they've nerfed Judgment. So what that means is it is now no longer worth using Divine Storm on 2 targets just to get that extra stack to buff the next Judgment. Now, that won't last forever, because if Divine Judgment is ever going to be useful, for those conditions to be met, it will also have to be the case that Divine Storm will be worthwhile doing on 2 targets. Not because Divine Storm on 2 targets will do more straight-up damage than the Templar's Verdict on 1. It won't. But the extra damage you're going to get out when you use your Judgment will be worth it. But at the moment, that's not the case. But that, you know, the other side of it is that also means don't use Divine... I don't think there is any situation now that can exist where we would... So, use Divine Judgment. We've gone from a week ago where I thought, oh, of course, we're all going to use Divine Judgment, to actually no, under no circumstances, until they've buffed it. And they may not buff it until the pre-patch goes live. Because I know that there's a big buff coming for that. And I think that's been held off until BFA, until we basically shed our 2-set bonus. But at the moment, it's even with that 2-set bonus, is not worthwhile. So they may buff it a bit earlier. Who knows? We'll have to just see. So when it's worthwhile, so what I would say is, if ever you get to a situation where your sims are telling you that actually Divine Judgment is worthwhile taking over Consecration and Wake of Ashes, then it will be worth using Divine Storm on 2 targets in that situation. Because until it is, it isn't. And And there we go. So that's basically where we are after the pre-patch. As I say, everything in the guide, because I try to approach it from a point of view of, well, even if they retune this and retune that, the information in it is mostly about how the things work and give a bit of guidance, but with a heavy emphasis on, but you need to sim yourself for various things. The same will also be done of the Essentials Guide, which I will have out for when BFA itself launches. I'm just hoping that they don't change the way something works. Changing the relative damage or throughput of something after that should be fine, because I'll always sort of update, you know, with companion guides throughout BFA. But yeah, they change things. They change things all the time. But the information in that guide is still relevant. It's just where I said we'll probably be using Divine Judgment, the answer is no, we won't. Unless they buff it in the next few days, in which case we will again. So there's no point in me changing anything there. If even I could. That's the problem with doing a video guide. Unlike a website guide, which you can then change it, and then a few days later you need to change it again, well, you change it again. It's a pain in the ass, but you can do it. Video guide, you can't. So anyway, let me know in the comments below, as I said, about the sort of things you might be having issues with. Some of the things I'd also quite like to see what sort of things you prefer of the BFA Paladin compared to Legion, or what some things you're disappointed with. That's always useful information to be able to pass on in feedback. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people who may also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.